Hello friend, this is Ryan Hicks of TalkToProfit.com. Today I want to talk to you about the downgrade mentality, minimalism, and other ways that people use to encourage you into mediocrity and limitation. You know, I talked about this before. I had another video I did on minimalism and people were just furious. All the minimalists came out justifying, making excuses. I don't even believe many of them even watched the video because the arguments they were making for minimalism were all addressed in the video. And the video was not against minimalism. It was against minimalism for the sake of saving money only. And that is a common mentality today. There's actually psychological benefits to minimalism, to living a modest lifestyle. You know, the success that is in modern culture, having more and more, bigger house, bigger cars, more cars, boats, and just accumulating more things is not good. Jesus taught a doctrine of non-accumulation, not just amassing a bunch of stuff, but put your treasures in heaven. Doesn't mean you can't have some things on earth. Of course, you can have nice, luxurious, abundant things. God gives you richly and freely of all things to enjoy. But minimalism is very often just a cover for poverty. It's a cover for mediocrity and limitation. It's a cover for lack of faith in God. I know that will enrage some people, but it's the truth. Because I can't tell you how many people I've talked to who are minimalist, and the only things they keep going back to is how much money they're saving. How they save so much. They don't have to pay for this anymore. They don't have to have a cleaner because their house is so small. It's this saving, 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 poverty, poverty, poverty. I'd rather you have more things and be thinking abundance, be thinking opulence, be thinking luxury, be thinking God's infinite bounty in this universe, than to be shrinking back in fear, living a minimalist lifestyle, only because you're afraid there's not enough. So you have to save every penny, because there may not be some tomorrow. You have to live as minimally as possible, because you don't want to have too much in expenses. That's never the proper way to go. Now, living minimally is fine, and it can be good. There's a lot of psychological benefits, like I mentioned, to it, because we're not really created to have an accumulation mentality. That's like a different version. Sometimes the people who are accumulating the most have a poverty mentality because they're accumulating more because they're afraid. They're living in fear, so they're always getting more and more and more because of fear. So sometimes minimalism and overaccumulation can really be just two sides of the same coin. It's based in fear. It's based in a poverty mentality of there's not enough, so I got to get more and more and more. Now, of those two, the person who has accumulated more is in a better position, at least, because if something there's a downturn in the economy or whatever goes on in their business, they at least have some things to sell off. The minimalist has nothing, but that doesn't make either of those the right approach. I want you to think about life not in limitation, not in lack, not in mediocrity, but in abundance. That there is an abundance available freely to you from your Father in heaven. You don't have to have a bunch of things around you to be content, because your source is God, not all those things. You also don't have to have less than what you really want, because there's lack and limitation in the world. You don't have to live minimally, live in the smallest place you can, drive the smallest car, not even have a car, or whatever may be that is some limitation you're holding to. It's not really what you want, but you're doing it to save money. Now, if you want to live in a tent, have a bicycle, or just walk everywhere, that's fine. It doesn't matter to me what you do as far as that goes. Just make sure it's rooted and grounded in a belief in the abundance of God. That it's not because you're shrinking back and you're afraid of not having enough. So you're just trying to keep yourself having as little as possible, so you never have to be afraid that you might lose the little you have. But you also don't want to go in the other end where you're just accumulating because you're afraid as well. And this idea that people have of downgrading, it happens a lot when people get older, their children leave, and then they say, well, we're going to downgrade. We have an empty nest, so we're going to get a smaller place. But very often it is not based in what they want to do. It's based in fear. It's based in limitation. Oftentimes it's based in a mentality that we're going to retire someday, so we need to have lower expenses so we can afford all this stuff. That's not the way to approach life. You should always be approaching life in the abundance mentality. Not poverty, not shrinking back, not fear, but that God freely gives you all things richly to enjoy. Now, if you think you can't afford everything you have right now, well, one, why do you get it in the first place? But why not just look for more ways to get more income coming in? Why always pull back? Why always have less? And as I said, you can certainly live that way, and if that makes you more comfortable and gives you benefits of just not having all that clutter, great. But don't do it strictly based on money. Don't do it strictly based because you're pulling back and afraid of not having enough, not being able to afford all the stuff you have now. Now, if you don't want all this stuff anymore, you're done with it, you've had it, you've enjoyed it, now it's like, I don't really need this. You know, I've known people who had Rolls Royces and Bentleys, and now they drive just regular Toyotas or Hondas or whatever, and they're living way more toward the minimalist side than the abundance and opulence they could be living, and they're happy, and they're not doing it out of fear. They have plenty of money, they're not accumulating a bunch of stuff, they just don't need it anymore. And when you do have success and you do understand the abundance of God, you can live however you want. If you want to live in a small, tiny house, have a few things, that's fine. You can do that because you can live the way you want. But this downgrade mentality of I have to have less and less and less because there's not enough out there, because maybe God won't give me enough, maybe God won't provide. They never say those words. They never ever say that. But that's what it's all grounded in. It's all grounded and rooted in fear. In not enough. In there may be some hard time coming around the corner that I won't be able to thrive in. The Great Depression, the average person was rooted and grounded in fear. They got dragged down in it. But there were plenty of people who were successful and made more millions during that time. A time of great lack for many people, and they experienced great abundance. That should be you. Now, hopefully there's no bad times in your economy. Everything goes well. Everybody keeps rising and doing better and better. That's the ideal scenario. But you're not tied into any economy. You can do more. You can have more. You can be more. Now, you don't have to have more even. Maybe you're quite content with what you have. That's great. But don't start pulling back. Somebody tells you the economy is about to do bad, or this is going to go wrong, and you start getting in fear and pulling back and downgrading your things. That's never a way to live. God didn't ask you to downgrade, to have less, unless you've been just accumulating, and in that level of fear, where you're just hoarding stuff, you don't have to pull back. Instead of looking for ways to pay less, to have less, look for ways to accomplish more and bring in more income into your life. There's always an abundance available to you. There's no limitation in God. Don't be limited. Don't let people drag you down into limitation and mediocrity. My friend, keep progressing, keep moving forward, keep being the great success that God created you to be. I pray this was a blessing for you. May God bless you richly.